And I think that brilliantly set the scene and the context for this, about the conditions necessary for collective action. And to dive deeper into those conditions, I'd love to invite 3 brilliant movement builders onto the stage. Welcome Issey, Hikaru, and Sarah. Come up. Welcome, welcome. How are we doing?
Amazing.
Good. All right, so super quick fire intros, first of all, and we'll start on this side with you, Sarah, and come around. So in like a minute or less, Sarah, co-lead executive of B Lab Global, the organization behind B Corp movement. They now have 10,000 B Corps with 1 million employees across them. Sarah, 1 minute, what's your connection to collective action?
That's quite an intro. Thank you very much. Yeah, so it's great to be here. That was a hard act to follow. Louisa, wherever you are, that was beautiful. Just thank you for kind of grounding us in that story. My name is Sarah Schwimmer. I'm the co-lead executive at B Lab Global. As you've just heard, there are over 10,000 B Corps now around the world. That has tripled in size in just the last 5 or 6 years or so, which I think is important because we'll talk a little bit together today about momentum and what does it mean in this moment in different parts of the world. So over 10,000 B Corps where over 1 million people around the world work in over 100 different countries. So it's really lovely to be here. I'm really excited to be representing some of that sort of corporate behavior change work and to talk a little bit about the infrastructure of what we have seen really works in collective action.
Brilliant. We'll dive into that in a minute. Next up, Executive Director of Climate Cardinals, now mobilized 19,000 plus volunteers to do what? You tell us more, Hikaru.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Louisa, for the incredible opening. And it's such a pleasure to be here with you both, Sarah and Issey, and thanks so much, Nick, for moderating. My name is Hikaru Hayakawa. I am the Executive Director and the Founding Director of Climate Cardinals. We are a global youth-led climate education organization. We have 19,000 volunteers in 145 countries, and we are breaking language barrier in the climate movement so that every community can take action and protect their future. And so we started 6 years ago as a group of teenagers, and now this is my full-time job, and I get to be here with all of you, and I'm so excited.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Hikaru. And next up, we have Issey Gladston, founder of the somewhat notorious meme page, Sexy Climate Change, and also head of social at Chile Digital Activism. Tell us more, Issey.
Just echoing what everyone said, thank you for having me today. I'm Issey. I'm a climate communications strategist, founder of Sexy Climate Change, head of social at Chile, which is a digital activism app, and I also run a 300-person book club in London called Hot House Book Club. Sexy Climate Change was born out of this idea that getting involved in climate doesn't have to be boring, it can be fun, it can be interesting. We have a podcast, I write a column for a fashion magazine in London, there's the meme page, we also do lots of free events with free drinks and DJs, which I think is actually very important to movement building, is dancing. So that's me.
Okay, brilliant. So we already heard crepes, free drinks. It doesn't have to be boring. We're already kind of going into the important, juicy stuff here, which is, I wanted to ask, what is your secret sauce? Like, what gets people involved in the collective action that you do, and what keeps them there as well? You touched on it a little there, Issey, so maybe let's start with you. What's the secret sauce at Sexy Climate Change?
Well, I think sometimes me having Sexy Climate Change and saying that things need to be fun rubs people up the wrong way, and they're like, but political education needs to be serious. This is a very serious issue. And I agree with that, but also I think sometimes you have to see onboarding people into movements like a sales funnel. So you're moving them down the funnel, and activism is like that too. Like, no one wakes up deciding that they want to be an organizer. Like, there's always something that brings you in. Like, the whole reason that I do activism is because I love the Beyonce album, the self-titled one that came out in 2012, because that's how I learned about feminism. And then from that, I started to learn about the climate crisis and all different social justice issues. So I definitely keep that in mind with my events, and I try and make it fun and interesting. Recently, we did one on the political power of music, and half the people came because they wanted to hear the climate stuff, and half the people came because they just liked the musicians who were on the panel. But by coming to the event, by meeting people, by seeing everyone who was there, these people started to learn more and more, and it might have been their first contact with the movement. So I think making things understandable, making them fun, and I also love humor because it holds the darkness and the difficulty of this space, but people leave your kind of communication not feeling too bogged down and scared. So yeah, that's probably everything from me on that front.
I saw you nodding a lot. That was resonating for you as well? What would you add?
No, definitely, and I love that answer. And I think when I think about what moves people, two things come to mind. The first is community, and the second is, as Louisa was sharing, opportunities for impact. And so, like as I shared, Climate Cardinals started as a group of teenagers. It was a high school project. We had $500. We were on Google Classroom, and we were just doing this because we saw an issue in our community, which is that most people don't speak English. The vast majority of climate information is only available in English. 6 years later, like these are some of the closest people I've ever met in my life, and we're in a loneliness crisis right now. And research shows that people who are civically engaged are more mentally resilient. And when you think about opportunities for impact too, there's so many people who do want to take action, and all of us in this room, we've been lucky enough to have a time or an opportunity in which we did something and it changed things, and that's led us to this space to keep on doing it. But for a lot of people, they're living their day-to-day lives, or they haven't had that opportunity. And so for us, when we said, oh, you could translate climate information and take action, that brought in so many young people who didn't necessarily feel represented in the climate movement, but realized that, oh, I speak another language, and so I can do something, and there's so many ways to get involved.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that, the community, something also very close to my own heart, people coming back for the relationships that they build there. What would you add to that? Sarah, you talked a little about infrastructure also.
Yeah, I think you both said it so well. I think from the B-Lab standpoint, what we have really seen is also taking a lesson from the many, many, many social movements that have come before B-Lab, and understanding that social movements historically have worked best and have had the most, structural and sort of sustainable, lasting change when there has been a shared framework. So that does not mean that the movement needs to be monolithic. And I really appreciated what Louisa said just before this about not needing 1 million people doing the same thing, but needing millions of people bringing to bear what is best about each of us. So recognizing the need for diversity in a movement is something that we at B-Lab are trying to replicate and have done so and are seeing. So for us, when I talk about infrastructure, what I'm talking about, for those of you who aren't familiar with B-Lab, is that we are an economic social system change movement. And we have built standards for businesses that demonstrate what does good look like? How can a business perform in a way that does not just prioritize shareholders, but also prioritizes everyone here, everyone not here, our planet? And we have been around for about 20 years now. So I'm speaking as the elder on the panel. I'll just call it out, own my wisdom in my age. But B-Lab has been around for about 20 years, and in that time, we've seen this movement grow, and we've seen this movement move from a place where we were sort of laughed at, and the idea that business could be done a different way was absurd, to now proving that that is not only possible, but looking at, just like Issey and Hikaru are talking about, how do we continue to organize and leverage the power of this diverse movement? So I think for me, there's something really important in the joy, in the fun, in the creativity, in the shared humanity, and also in the shared framework, the shared tool that brings you all together.
Okay, cool. I think we're getting close to what's at the core of this. Something you mentioned there, I think, is really important in terms of the diversity of the movement, of it not being monolithic. I think many of us, we are still operating in bubbles to an extent. How do we burst those bubbles? How do we get the unusual suspects on board? What's the trick there? And whoever feels most called can take that answer first.
I'm happy to share. So this is something I've been thinking a lot about because, yeah, we are a global organization. We work with so many different communities, and of course, what's most important locally varies so much. And so there's this incredible book by this journalist, Candace Callison, and her whole argument is that we're asking the wrong question because we keep saying, like, look, the climate science is clear. Why don't more people care about climate change? And then what she actually argues is that what we should be asking is how do people come to care about climate change? And so when you look at all these different communities, it's just incredible how many people have cared and bought into this movement. So she goes at the financial sector and she says, look, the financial sector has their own language, they have their own culture. They talk about climate in terms of climate risk. She goes to environmental evangelists in the US, and they talk about the climate movement in terms of Christianity and protecting like God's creation. And so there's so many ways in which we can get people involved. And then also within our own work, there's so many people that I speak to them, and they're like, yeah, like. There's a Sudanese activist I'd spoken to, and then she was like, the first time I heard about climate change, I was in my late 20s, and I just stumbled upon it on Google, and I realized that all these issues with the conflict was related to the climate, and then that's how she became a climate activist.
Feel free to bypass me here. Jump
Yeah, we don't need you. We don't need you.
Yeah.
No, thank you for being here. I just wanted to build on that and say I think there's something really important about, again, like naming that and looking at appreciating that there needs to be and there is strength in diversity in a movement, and also recognizing where your people are or what is your issue, what brought you here. And so in the B-Lab movement, what we see this in a whole host of different ways. One example is what's known as the Be Beauty Coalition. So these are businesses that are all in the beauty space that are recognizing that they have shared challenges and may not be able to solve those challenges as individual businesses. So they're coming together. There is just recently launched a B Corp Coffee Collective. So I think there's something about recognizing that even within a really diverse big tent movement, finding where you have common ground and common sort of needs, in this case, business needs.
I think there's also a case for kind of co-benefits of climate action. I think to get to these different bubbles, I did a lot of research on the information deficit model, which is this idea that people have where they're like, oh, people just need to know more about climate. And it's like, that doesn't do anything. If it was going to work, it would have worked. But it doesn't. So instead, you have to think about, in the UK, we have a cost of living crisis. So a lot of our climate comms has become, actually, climate action makes your life cheaper. Or, like, I have a good personal story. Like, my dad is not into climate stuff at all. As much as I kind of shout at him about it, he's not listening. And he recently got an electric car because it goes very fast, and he likes driving fast. He got this one electric car, he loved it, and then he decided that he saw the other benefits of it, how it's cheaper, how it's more convenient, and he ended up getting electric cars for his business. And then he thought, oh, actually, it's cheaper if I put solar panels on the roof of my office to power these electric cars. So he kind of decarbonized his entire car fleet, not from the desire to decarbonize, but initially just because he wanted to speed, probably. So I think it's co-benefits I think you have to talk to people about instead of just ramming climate down their throat, unfortunately.
Love it.
I think our dads should meet. They sound very similar, so we'll have to connect them.
Okay, good dad solidarity. And shout out to Issey's dad. You can send him the video after his. Love that framing of co-benefits and of, just reframing this whole issue a little. And I like that we talked about the joy and the fun in movement building. I do also feel like we should name the moment we're in right now a little. So green lash, funding's cut, commitments rolled back, deliberate effort by people in power to make it feel like nothing we do does matter. Does that change how each of you are operating at all, or are you still going about business as usual?
Yeah, I can kick us off. So I live in Washington, D.C. in the United States. Very much experiencing a different sort of lifestyle right now than even a year ago. And so I do think we don't need to be naive. I think, as you say, we should name this moment. And I think we can also benefit from perspective and understand that this is indeed a moment. And looking at this work as being intergenerational, multi-generational. This is a relay race. And so I do think if you look again at the history of social movements, and I'll use an example in the United States where I'm from, we saw around the turn of the last century just a tremendous enclosure of wealth, monopolies, just reduction in civil rights. And within 10 years, because of a really diverse, sometimes very tense, not connected sort of body of movements, we saw changes in policies. We saw the expansion of voting rights. We saw the reduction and breaking up of monopolies. And we saw wealth inequality decrease. What we're seeing today, I think Issey's point around wealth inequality and your dad's sort of motivations needs to absolutely not be understated. As we see the connection between, in my country, the erosion of democratic norms and the rise of authoritarianism, we see the rollbacks in climate policy and investments, and we need to recognize that so much of this is rooted in tremendous wealth inequality, which is why I think that there is an incredible opportunity for us to continue to look to business leadership, which is exactly what we are doing, to lead and to say that we are actually going to continue to do the work. And what we've seen in the B Corp community is that business leaders, and these are individuals, even though some people like to think of companies as people, these are individuals making choices, that they are more committed than ever, and in a lot of ways are feeling that they are sort of built for this moment. And so not to be trite about it, but I do think that my perspective is that we don't want to waste this crisis and recognize that we have the opportunity to bring more people into this space because more people are feeling the challenges of the climate crisis and wealth inequality more acutely than ever.
Yeah, I think at a time at which so much of what we know, so many institutions, so many systems are being thrown out the door, like this is also like one of our greatest opportunities to really take a step back and realize like how can we rebuild a world that's much more resilient and just than what we're experiencing, and like how prepared can we be for the moment in which the pendulum swings back, and then we have people who care about climate action and power, and like also how do we take advantage of situations like in New York where there have been people who are now in office who have the opportunity to prove that a pro-climate agenda is better for everyone. And I think that also thinking about movements too, we have a lot to learn from frontline communities and also the youth movement too, because in particular, when you think about funding, right, there's so many organizations and communities that have never had the funding, but they kept showing up. They changed so much. Even when you think about 2017 through 2019 and all the youth protests and youth organizing, like for the most part, that wasn't philanthropically backed. And look at what all of us accomplished. And so we have so much possibility, and it's just up on all of us to keep on going and keep our head in the game.
Yeah, and I think to build on that, the topic of not needing philanthropic funding, but being able to almost do it yourself and to meet this moment not with panic, but sort of resilience and resistance. Something that we do at Chile on the Digital Action app is we have a donation module or a supporter module where you can subscribe to your favorite activist like it's Substack. But what that actually means is that activists on the ground don't have to chase funding, like these big funding grants, and spend half their time doing a grant application. You can just kind of directly give them the resources that they need. And I think decentralized funding and small grants is something that we need to see a lot more of so that people can test out their ideas, see if it works, see if it doesn't work. Not too much reporting back, I think, would be great for this moment.
Brilliant. Yeah, highly recommend you download Chile, the app, and get involved, by the way. So what I'm hearing from you all is that big cracks in the system at the moment, but some light shining through them maybe, and in these dark moments is a good opportunity to reorganize and get more resilient. Bit of a wild card question now connected to that. I'd love to know in this time as we take stock, is there one player, could be a demographic or a type of organization that we underestimate as a potential force for good and that we could be tapping into more right now? Well, lots of looking at each other for this one.
I'm happy to go. And for me, I mean, I have to go back to our mission, of course, and there are only 400 million native English speakers in the world. 6.5 billion people don't speak English at all. 98% of climate information is only available in English, 98. And so there's so many people who've never actually been truly invited into this movement. And every day I feel so optimistic because, I wake up in the morning and I get an email, and then, one of our chapter, like Raj, our chapter lead in Nepal, has led disaster relief in different languages, or Joel, our chapter lead at Kampala International University in Uganda, has gone out into his community and led workshops for hundreds of young people on climate education. And even when you see civic engagement decreasing in the global north, like the places that are the future of the world, like Nepal, like Uganda, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, like they are building a real civic culture. Like you saw what happened in Nepal last year, that also inspired movements in places like Madagascar that didn't even show up in the news. And there's so much possibility in the rest of the world that is really leading climate action and resilience, and really needs to be invited into this global stage too.
Okay, awesome. Very beautifully put. So massive untapped potential in the global majority non-native English speakers. Thank you for sharing. Sarah, you want to?
I love that, and that really resonates. And I just thank you for helping to make this a more diverse and inclusive space, and ensuring that we're not just inviting, but also, as you say, learning from people who know much more than those of us already here. I think my response would be nature in general is often left out of the conversation. And so I wanted to give a couple really tangible examples of what including nature could actually look like. So we have a number of different examples of businesses, of B Corps that either have a person on the board who is designated to represent nature. So nature has a governance role, or has some sort of directorship role. And I wanted to name a specific country. Are any of you French by any chance? Seems like the likelihood is high. So there is a French B Corp called Narcisse. They put nature on the board, and their work has directly inspired a proposed French corporate law, which was just tabled at the National Assembly here this month. And this law seeks to give nature a voice as a union member, an investor, a shareholder. So I just want to name that as an example, because sometimes nature can seem, how do you put nature on the board? How do you represent that in corporate decision making? And some companies are already choosing and innovating on new ways to do that. That alone is pretty cool yet. But the coolest part to me is that this now is being debated here in this country in a policy level, right? So I think when we talk about collective action, sometimes we don't all get to live to see sort of the next step, or what is the outcome of there. And the work is never done. But this is an example to me of that through line of when individual corporate people, make choices to show that a different way of doing business is possible. It matters for that company, but it could matter for this entire country, depending on how this tabling goes. So I wanted to offer those examples.
Love that. Super practical and local example. Thank you. Would you add, do you have an underestimated player other than your dad?
Well, actually, I was going to say, I do think that we are sort of underestimating the responsibility that middle-aged white men in power have, because, so many of my friends are youth activists. They go into these companies, they spend an afternoon speaking, the company's ticked off their ESG or their CSR stuff. These old kind of white men say to them, oh, you've inspired me. I've got so much faith in the next generation to fix things. And it's like, but you're the one holding the keys to the castle. You're the one that could make a decision probably along B Corp lines that would change things tomorrow. So why do we have to wait 15 years for us to be in a position of power? You guys can do it. So I think, annoyingly, we kind of, even though they are the center of everything, they do need to be brought in a bit more and put under pressure, I think.
Love that. Thank you. Feel like I want to decenter myself further now. Thank you so much for that very important reminder. We're kind of slowly wrapping up now, and I'm going to give you 1 minute exactly each to close this. And to close this, you can either choose what we need more of in collective action right now, or you can close it with a big call to action to the crowd. And we will go this way this time. So Issey, Hikaru, Sarah, and then we're out.
I think kind of building on Louisa's point from earlier, something that I find helps with the climate anxiety or the just general world panic is leaning on faith a bit more. Not faith in a God, but kind of faith that other people have also got this. I think so often the response I get in my work is maybe it doesn't suit people and they're like, oh, your framing should be different. This isn't appropriate. I mean, I can't even say the tagline of the org on stage.
She really can't.
So, but there's always a pushback of people saying, oh, but you should be doing X, Y, Z. Like, this is how you should be doing it. And I think having faith that other people are running their own orgs, other people are communicating in that way, and I just need to carry on in kind of my path and my talents, and everyone else is on their paths and their talents, and they've also kind of got this, and we've all hopefully got each other. I think that's what we need more of.
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I love that. Something I've been thinking a lot about recently is that, unfortunately, historically, very few people have been involved in social change. And so I studied the history of decolonization when I was in university. And a lot of the major leaders in decolonization, they all knew each other. In fact, some of them lived a block away in Paris, and they're all part of the same social clubs and everything. And there's a real need to democratize social change and to provide opportunities for everyone to get clear opportunities for everyone to get involved, and also to elevate and value the work that communities are doing that often is unrecognized. And I think as we look forward, I think also recognizing that amidst everything that's going on, there's still so much action that's happening in places in which we never look or never realize.
Thank you, Hikaru. Love that too. Thank you. Last word is yours, Sarah.
I mean, that's the way it should always be, I think. I think what I would just build on those two is what we cannot do is mistake complexity for rigor, right? So sometimes simplicity is right. Sometimes we already have the answers. And the reason that I raise that is that I think that there is, I mean, maybe to your point, Issey, there is this sort of narrative that I am seeing increasingly, which is, sometimes, the next generation will save us, or technology will save us, or whatever that looks like. We will save us, right? We will make choices to behave in ways that we know are aligned with our own values and what this planet requires of us and what we require of each other. And so I do think that for me, we don't need to be looking for more complexity. We need to be looking at what are the individual choices that we can make, and how do we find our people to then leverage those for more collective action.
Brilliant, love that. I even saw some clenched fists on the front row there on the "We will save us" line. Let's leave it at that. I think it's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much, Issey, Hikaru, and Sarah. Let's have a big round of applause for them. Yeah, and do we hug again, or what should we do? Well done, yeah. Well done. Well done. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you again for lifting the iceberg a little on the conditions for collective action.